Selma, apart from what we see in the newspapers, what we see in our practices, in our offices, the majority of child rape is intrafamilial. It is somebody known and trusted to the victim or survivor. It's a neighbor. It's a stepfather. It is those that have easy access to children, like teachers, kindergarten teachers, and sometimes domestic workers. But the vast majority is intrafamilial, and that's what makes it so complex. Because you sit in one family where you literally have the victim and the perpetrator. And can you imagine the chaos? Because you sit with one person that need psychosocial support and where we need to focus on the healing. On the other hand, you sit with a person that must be arrested, go through the court system and stuff. So,
welcome back to yet another episode of Sex Talks Podcast with me, your host, Selma Ndasilohenda Iyambo. As always, I'm super excited to be here with you, and I'm beyond grateful that you chose Sex Talks Podcast once again. If you're a first-time listener, welcome to the Sex Talks Podcast family. Here, we are all about creating an informed and educated society of young people who can openly have conversations about their sexual health while sharing their personal stories and hearing from experts in the field. We are recording yet another episode live from the Be Free Youth Campus thanks to our collaboration with the Be Free Studios under the One Economy Foundation. You can find this youth-friendly space at the Windhoek Multipurpose Youth Center or online at Be Free Namibia. Before we can commence with today's episode, I would like to give a trigger warning to all our listeners. We are going to discuss a topic which is very sensitive, and you may need to be in a safe space or be closer to a trusted adult or a therapist that you may be able to see, because this is quite sensitive and your health and well-being are our main priority. Should you feel the need for psychosocial support, please do reach out to us. We are located at the Be Free Youth Campus, or you can call Lifeline Childline at 116 to be able to be booked with a therapist or speak to somebody that can assist you. This conversation that we are stepping in today is one that is very sensitive, as I've mentioned, but one that we need to be able to have, because sexual violence against children is one that has been on a rise over the last few years in our country. This is just not a national crisis. This is a deep wound that is in our communities. Often at times, survivors are silenced, and when children, they are overlooked and people do not believe them. So we need to have this type of conversation to see what do we need to be on the lookout for and how can we protect our children in Namibia. Joining us in studio today is Dr. Veronica Theron. She is a social worker by profession who currently serves as a Director of Health and Wellness at the Be Free Youth Campus under the One Economy Foundation. Dr. Theron, thank you so much for joining us in studio today, and welcome to Sex Talks Podcast. How are you doing?
thank you, Selma. I'm doing well, and thank you so much for placing focus on such an important topic.
You're very much welcome. I mean, we are quite fortunate to have you here, because for most of the time that we know you, if you're not in court, you're busy assisting some way around the country. So we're quite fortunate to have you here. Now, before we can be able to get into the nitties and the gritties of child violence in Namibia or sexual violence, Doctor, can you please break it down to us as to what is sexual violence?
Thank you, Selma, for the question. There are many definitions, but I would like to focus on what is the definition according to the Namibian legislation. So whether it's an adult or a minor, it's any sexual act under coercive circumstances, meaning under circumstances that makes it very difficult for a person to say no. Circumstances where you don't have any other option but then to comply with the expectations of the perpetrator. Any act, it can be penetration, it can be masturbation, it can be oral sex, it can be anal sex, it can be somebody using inserting objects. So for me, we sometimes use insensitive terms when we refer to child rape. We mentioned intercourse, we mentioned sex, which then make it a lesser crime we literally minimize what it is. So rape should be called rape, whether it's in the newspapers, on social media, when we have podcasts like this. Child rape is child rape. Selma, apart from what we see in the newspapers, what we see in our practices, in our offices, the majority of child rape is intrafamilial. It is somebody known and trusted to the victim or survivor. It's a neighbor. It's a stepfather. It is those that have easy access to children, like teachers, kindergarten teachers, and sometimes domestic workers. But the vast majority is intrafamilial, and that's what makes it so complex. Because you sit in one family where you literally have the victim and the perpetrator. And can you imagine the chaos? Because you sit with one person that need psychosocial support and where we need to focus on the healing. On the other hand, you sit with a person that must be arrested, go through the court system and stuff. So who do you support? And what I see often is that how the victim and the mother or the caregiver, the guardian, are ostracized and isolated and literally be treated like the troublemakers for bringing the other person to book.
That's quite true, and I love how you've mentioned that most of the perpetrators are not strangers to the children. Now, how does this affect disclosure and seeking justice for those children when it's family-based?
It's very rare, it's very seldom that a disclosure is shortly after the incident, because we know grooming and many a times sexual violence to children are non-violent, meaning it is not somebody waiting for a child, grabbing the child and violently rape the child. It is somebody that takes time to earn the trust, to build rapport, to get to know the weakness and the strengths, to know exactly when the child is accessible. Also, sometimes grooming those around the child. They literally go to an extent to see what is it that the child like. How can I get the child away from other people, relatives in the family? What times will it be best? So if the child's mother is going to church every Wednesday night between 7 and 8, so it is pre-planned. And that's why it is difficult also then for the child to disclose, because it is my mother's boyfriend, or it is my best uncle that's taking care of the whole family, or it is the uncle next door that sometimes gives us food. And with child abuse comes a lot of bribes and a lot of secrecy. So in the grooming phase, they would make sure that they brainwash the child, so to speak, to say, this is our secret, this is our fun game, please make sure you don't tell anybody, it's just between the two of us. And we raise our children in a fashion that you need to be obedient, please be respectful, please do what adults tell you to, not considering that it's exactly that good manners, the obedience that perpetrators use to gain access to children. So disclosure is many a times long after the incident, and sometimes after a long period of abuse, which is sad, because the longer the abuse, the longer the exposure, the bigger the trauma and the long-term effects.
Wow, doctor. I think I have now so many questions, but let's start off with, based on your experience in court and having overseen so many cases, what are some of the most occasional cases of sexual violence amongst children in Namibia? Like examples of when that happens. You see how you've mentioned that it can be penetration or objects. Which ones are more regular?
So as I mentioned, it happens over a span of time. So they start with the more subtle ones. So they will make sexual inappropriate jokes. And then they They also test, is this child knowledgeable about subjects like that? Is the child sensitive? What is the physical reaction? So some children are educated and they will immediately resist and say, I don't like what you're saying. I don't like you touching my knee. I don't like you coming so close in my personal space. And then they will back off. But they gradually go into more serious types of, so from the jokes, they go into touching. And from touching, maybe showing pornography or short images. And from that, fingering. To make sure that it's not too painful, because they must make it look enticing and attractive. So it's like if they tell a child that daddy is teaching you what adults must do, what young girls must do. Some in the health professionals can easily say, I need to examine you. I need to check that everything is fine down there. So they do it in a fashion that looks not harmful and stuff. And later, as the grooming progress, they will go into full penetration. Also, they study the victim. So if it's a child that just started the developmental phase, so they make sure that the child later participate in the act, because then it's more difficult for the child to disclose, because now it looks like you were part of it, you enjoyed it, to a point where they can bring either the boy or the girl to a point of orgasm, or where the boy ejaculates. And if they get to that point, it is like, but you were part of it. Can you remember the other day, this is what happened?
And you had fun.
Now you get the child to keep secret, because we tend to see sexual intercourse as naughty, and the child knows that if this get to the attention of my parents or my caregiver, I will be in trouble. And that's where we have difficulties with children disclosing. And most of the time they disclose accidentally or long after the incident.
No, I think the one part where you say you get to the point where they trust and they're like, oh, I was having fun, but also now how do I tell my parents, because now the conversation around sex is also a taboo with our parents. Now, another issue that kids encounter is that they don't have the language or the safe space to speak about what has happened to them. How do we begin to change that as now parents and trusted members of a community that need to be on the lookout for children?
I think we need to start right from the beginning. As a child start to speak, to teach them the right names of body parts. Because even for us professionals, if children come and they report, he hurt me with a stick, he played with my flower and stuff, how do I take that as concrete evidence to a court of law? When we educate our children, we need to do it in an age-appropriate way. So not too early, not too much detail. And if we are not sure, I advise that we go to a trusted friend, a professional, who can do it in a manner that will not overwhelm the child. So body parts is important. Good touch and a bad touch, and the difference in it. When is it okay for somebody to touch me? Where is it okay? If it's not okay and it makes me feel uncomfortable, how should I react? Who should I tell? Good secret and a bad secret. Because I just mentioned, the secrecy around child sexual abuse. But it should be done doing good and not doing more harm.
Oh, I think when you were speaking about what should be said, what should not be said, the whole aspect of age appropriate and who we should go to, I definitely do agree that we need to see somebody who are informed as to what to give to the child, compared to when you think you're doing something good while you're causing more harm to the child. Now, Doctor, you've mentioned how most of the sexual violence happens in family. and it takes a bit much longer for disclosure to happen. Now, what happens when I now have been abused as a child and 10 years later I want to seek justice for myself? How does that process look like?
Yeah, that's a question many people ask. It's important for us to give the information is it's never too late to disclose or to report a case. It can be 20 years down the line. If that means you are more emotionally prepared to come out with the story, to seek professional help, nobody can tell you that it is too late, because each and every case has its own merits. Some people, as long as they live in the same space as the perpetrator, they have all these threats. They have these fears of, but what is it that will happen when I disclose? Some people disclose when the perpetrator left the country or the common home, or when the perpetrator is dead.
I love how you've mentioned the aspect of safety, because if it's my own home, then I would not be safe with the perpetrator there. Yeah. But let's say that the perpetrator has not left the country, they are not yet dead, but I feel strong enough to come out. Is the safety for me after I've reported this case as a child?
That is a big role of the social worker or your psychologist or any of the therapists, is to safeguard the well-being of the victim. Make sure, is this a case where the child will be under undue stress because family members will interrogate, family members will start to threaten and stuff? Is this a case where I need to remove the child altogether from the common home? What are the alternative spaces? Is there a concerned aunt? Is there a hostel? Is there a social worker who exactly know where to place this child, not punishing the child? So how you remove should also be very sensitive, because if you just remove the child from the common home, the child might feel like, did I do something wrong? Now I'm not just out of the common home, the privacy of my room and stuff, I'm also now not seeing my siblings, my mother. So social workers must do a proper job in assessing the safety, the risks, the needs of the child. And removing the child should be the last resort. But also removing the child to a space where it will be in the benefit of the child. Because sometimes reality is we place the child in a children's home where you will share with 10 other kids, where you just one extra child, and where it will be difficult to adjust, and the child will experience it more a punishment than any assistance.
Now, doctor, if we have any parents that are listening that now want to report such a case, can you please walk us through the process of now from disclosure to reporting to the police and getting to court? How does that look like?
Let's start with how should a parent react when a child discloses, because that's important. It's make or break. If a child discloses, believe the child. Don't play judge, ask police questions, and in that, doing the blame game of, what were you doing there? Why didn't you tell me earlier? So that immediately makes the child feel like, oh, I'm at fault. So even if there were more detail to the story, the child will close up. So believe the child, and if you don't know how to handle it, seek professional help as soon as possible, because that's also then the job of the psychologist or social worker, child therapist, to help you navigate this difficult, because sometimes the information is overwhelming. It is somebody that you trusted, somebody that you allow to in the space of the child. So how you react is very important. If it is a case, an incident that happened in the last 2-3 days, make sure that the child get medical examination within 40 hours, ideally, latest 72 hours.
Okay.
Because it is important that the child is getting that emergency medical treatment to prevent STIs, to prevent HIV, to prevent pregnancy and stuff, but also to get the psychosocial treatment that the child would need. In disclosing, also, children don't afford the secondary trauma that comes with disclosure. Now, if you now disclose to, I'm making an example, the father that could be the perpetrator, can you imagine the reaction and the backlashes? So if the child is not giving details of who was the perpetrator, be sensitive in who you as a parent disclose to. As a non-abusive parent, know where you can get help. A state social worker, Lifeline, Childline, any medical doctor, a professional dealing with children, minor children, and who knows the process and the steps to take. Very important is not to take a bath, to get the medical assistance as soon as possible, and then to do the follow-ups. Because what I've experienced is we come immediately after disclosure, but we never come back to get the HIV results. We never come back to retest and see whether the child is now clean from any STIs or STDs and stuff. Where you report is important, and also your follow-up. Again, my experience is we make a big fuss shortly after the incident. Then we get police involved, court, social workers, psychologists and stuff, but then we don't follow up and we don't follow through. So the child will lose trust not only in the parent but in the whole system of, I informed you. You know the guts it took for me to disclose and to open up, and what's happening now?
Nothing.
Yeah. So the follow-up and the follow-through is of utmost importance.
And in terms of reporting, where can they go to report?
Your closest healthcare professional. In some smaller towns, we have clinics. We don't necessarily have social workers. So is it your nurse? Is it your registered nurse? Is it at the hospital? At hospitals, some hospitals, we have medical social workers. And then we have social workers in the Ministry of Gender, but also social workers in the Ministry of Health. Even in youth and other, for instance, safety and security. So in the absence of social workers, you literally go to a life skills teacher, a church leader, any trusted community leader, or then your police officers.
All right, doctor. You've mentioned something that is stuck by me in terms of when a child discloses to you and they don't tell you who the perpetrator is, and in you being sensitive about who you disclose to. Now, let's have an example that the perpetrator may be the mother and the person discloses to the father. And I'm saying this because often in society we look at men being most the perpetrators. Now, if the mother is the perpetrator and they disclose to the father, and as a father who's married to that woman, you're more likely to be frustrated and you want to take matters in your own hands. What advice do you then have for that parent in that moment? What do they need to know?
So first of all, as a parent, you must think, will my reaction or action make the scenario worse? So if the father is now informed that it was the mother, being violent, acting in a violent manner will make matters worse for the child. So as the non-abusive parent, you need to act in the interest of the child, the best interest. Make the child feel safe and make the child feel you did not cause the problem. Because if the child now realizes there's a quarrel between my mom and my dad because of me telling my story, easily a child in that scenario will reverse and say, actually,
I was joking,
or I was just angry. It's not what happened. And we do get cases like that. And that's why I reiterate how you react as an adult after disclosure is make or break. And violence is never the answer. It can never be a solution. So your spouse now sexually molested, abused the child, and you are now physically abusive towards your spouse.
Now it makes it a continuous cycle of abuse.
Exactly.
Now, doctor, you've also mentioned how disclosure often doesn't happen instantly. It happens over the year. What are some of the long-term impacts that it has on a child when they don't disclose their abuse?
So imagine a child not telling and remaining in the abusive sphere, in the close proximity to the perpetrator. So obviously you live in fear, because all that's going on in your mind is, when will it happen next? What if my mom find out? What if my dad find out? In cases where it's happening over a period of time, it is like, what will be the consequences for me for not telling? What will be the consequences? Because as I said, child rapists are not only using penetrative sex. What, for instance, if I watch pornography with him? So that whole turmoil of, I'm in trouble, how do I get out of here? Can you imagine the anxiety, the tension, the effect that it will have on the child's relationships, on the child's schoolwork, on the child's mental health, on the child's physical health? Many a times children will constantly complain of tummy aches. I'm not feeling well, but they cannot really put a finger on it. Why are you not feeling well? Because some children cannot express emotions. They cannot say, I'm sad, I'm scared. So they will say, I don't want to go to school, whatever. And that's how some of the cases are identified at school. Because the child is constantly sick, sometimes bad smell, sometimes absent. And then it looks like the child is the troublemaker and stuff. So many a times is when the teachers are strict and say, what is wrong with you? Why are you late every morning? Why are you like this? And then children just blurb it out to say, actually, I'm going through a lot and stuff. Other long term is, that self-blame and guilt. It's like, when I disclose, my mom and dad will divorce. Who will then take care of the family? So that whole sleep patterns change, eating patterns change. Sometimes you can see in the weight of the child. You can see in the child is washing a lot, like showering 3-4 times a day, or not taking care of the body at all. So you don't have specific indicators, because for every child it's different, but you can see there's either too much or too little, whether it's sleep, eat, in the behavior. Some children just become antisocial. I don't want to go play, I rather stay in my room, while others are going for intervals. I want to remain in the class, kind of stuff. So a sudden change in emotion, but also in behavior.
Wow, doctor, if something I'm picking up from what you just explained is the fact that we need to be present as teachers, as parents, and as members of the community. We need to be able to now observe as to when is there a change in their pattern, and how can we actually speak to them to be able to find out what's wrong, because some of those things happen right under our nose and we never pick them up. Now, another thing that happens is there's often a culture of shame and silence when it comes to abuse, especially in families. Now, how can members of the family be more supportive and responsive when it comes to cases of abuse? An example can be that you as an aunt, as a cousin, now hear that somebody has been molested in the family. How do you respond better compared to just shaming and being silent about it?
I think as community, as parents, as family, we need to self-respect, self-reflect, and know our own norms. our values, our standards. What is it that I struggle with? Imagine if I was sexually molested as a child. Mm-hmm. I never disclosed. I have my own inner struggles, and now somebody disclosed to me. Mm-hmm. Obviously, my unresolved past traumas will play a role and stuff. So, as parents, we need to deal with our own traumas, our own emotional turmoil in our heads, so that we can be present for our children and stuff. Also, some of the parents are emotionally absent. Mm-hmm. So even if there's a drastic change in the children living with us in one house, you will not notice it and stuff. But also have people around that can be on the lookout. We also see that children like peer-to-peer discussions. Mm-hmm. So if you notice a change in your child's behavior, use a trusted sibling, a niece, a nephew, even a neighbor to check in with your child on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. And say, because many of the disclosures mm-hmm. are not to parents directly. It's a friend at school, it's a trusted teacher, it's somebody that the child can relate to. So if you, for one or the other reason, are not so close to your child, which should not be the case, have people around that can have that close relationship and close conversations, frank conversations with your child.
Okay. Doctor, I'm just curious now, let's say in a situation whereby you have a trusted member have a conversation with a child and they disclose to that person, what role do they then have in that whole case should they decide to go seek justice?
Okay, so that person is called a first report. Mm-hmm. And I sometimes tell people in the public, lay people, mm-hmm. don't ask for too much detail. Mm-hmm. Because the more you know, the more you will be interrogated. So if a child is close to say that I was raped, mm-hmm. you don't need the detail of who did it, when, how often, going into all the detail. You literally, if you have the slightest suspicion, mm-hmm. you have a duty to report. Talking about the report, few people know that the report of abuse, whether it's physical, sexual, emotional, psychological, mm-hmm. is mandatory according to Namibian legislation.
What does that mean, doctor?
It's compulsory. If you work with children, mm-hmm. any duty bearer that are dealing with children, a nurse, school principal, a teacher, social worker, psychologist, psychiatrist, mm-hmm. kindergarten teacher, if you know of, even if you have a slight suspicion of abuse, mm-hmm. you have the duty to report. If you don't report, that's an offense.
I was about to ask you what happens when I don't.
You are liable, mm-hmm. And you can be charged with either a fine of 20,000 Namibian dollar or imprisonment up to 5 years, or both.
This is news to me. I didn't know this.
I think it's news to many people, and it's sad to say that so many medical doctors, professionals, practitioners working with children are not reporting. They can see a 15-year-old pregnant and they just treat it as a pregnancy. They don't treat it as rape. They work around the other ailments. They do the prenatal or the antenatal as part of their duties, but they are not reporting rape. And I want to reiterate, it is a crime. Reporting is mandatory, and consequences of not reporting is a fine, or it can be imprisonment up to 5 years. And I think it's high time that we have robust laws, but we are not implementing. And I think we need to create a presidency and lay charges against some of the practitioners for others to see, but it is punishable by law.
Thank you so much, Doctor. If anything I love about hosting this podcast is the fact that every week I get an opportunity to learn about something I didn't know when it comes to either sexual reproductive health, gender-based violence, or mental health. Doctor, we have now reached the end of the podcast, but we have what we call a quick fire segment, whereby we get to ask you 3 questions that are more around your area of expertise. Unfortunately, in this case, it's not fun, but it's more informative and drawing us closer to being a more present society that we are not bystanders of violence. Our first question is, what's that one thing that every child should know about their body, based on your experiences?
A very simple one, Selma, that I think they are taught in kindergarten. My body is nobody's body but mine. And anything that I feel comfortable with, I need to tell.
One thing, or rather a long statement, but one that is very crucial because it's your body.
Yeah.
A second question would be, what is that one myth about child abuse that you wish we could end today, if it were up to you?
That children lie about being abused, that they fabricate stories about abuse. And sometimes they tell us in so much detail that you can't help to believe. But still, other professionals would say, are you sure this is the truth?
But if you think about it, how can a child fabricate so much details about such an incident that is not even fun for them? Sure. Our final question is, what is the one thing that gives you hope when it comes to the fight of ending gender-based violence and sexual violence?
When I see a case where we intervened professionally and we literally journey with the victim from the beginning until the finalization of the court case, and through the process also educate other professionals in how it actually should be dealt with, and we get a positive outcome. The sad part is the person not getting this support. And at the end of the day, it's an acquittal or stuff. So every successful case where a client comes back and say, thank you, doctor. Was it not for this court case? Was it not for your intervention? I would not have been alive. I would not have been able to stand through the trial or stand through coming back for services, making sure that I am okay. Another rewarding part of my work is when you see victims turning into survivors, turning into advocates. I have so many clients that today are lawyers, social workers, working in the child protection system because they believe in the benefits of getting the services and they want to give back to community. So we have a lot of success stories of people that say, because I was helped, I now want to help others.
Wow, doctor. I think before I can be able to let you go, I'm just curious because you speak of interventions and how many clients you have. But for any of our listeners that may need any of this type of support, and I'm asking this because I know that we have a clinic here and we also have what we call the Break Free pillar here. What do you do and how can you better support children and other survivors of abuse in Namibia?
So our interventions speaks specifically to the needs of the person we deal with, whether it's an adult or a child. So some would come and they would complain about a relationship issue with a sibling. But as they trust the therapist on the other side of the table, they open up and they literally say, but I also have issues with this. Actually, this is why I came initially. I need help in this area and stuff. So at the clinic, we do a proper intake and an assessment to assess what exactly is it. Should the client see a psychologist, a psychological counselor, a medical doctor, a social worker, a youth officer? What's the real needs? Because we want to be relevant and stuff. And we have case conferences where we then draw up an action plan, an intervention plan that will suit the needs of the client. Many a times we do individual counseling, but because there's such a knock-on effect, a rippling effect, we end up working with the whole family. So we do family therapy. We also do group therapy. So if the person is already at a stage where they can open up, share their story with others, we do group therapy, which is very successful because it gives the message to your client that I'm not alone. Other people are also going through similar things. If she could go through the court process and came out more positive, she can then tell me how it will be easier for me. So, material support. We give refer out to other clinicians should this person need more specific help, like psychiatrists and stuff. Some of our young people must get small operations, and it is done right on the campus. So wellness and the Be Free Clinic are working hand in hand. So you will see there's a lot of cross referrals, and we can refer out should the need arise. The benefits for members of the campus is endless, and all the services are free of charge.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for taking time from your busy schedule to be here with us. And as she has mentioned, all the services are free here at the Be Free Youth Campus. You can be able to go to the Be Free Kids Clinic. Do you need psychosocial support there by the wellness pillar? Or do you just need free Wi-Fi or to sit into the STEM center to be able to have a computer literacy class, do robotics, or sit there to do your homework? But here, your health and well-being remains our main priority. And this episode is yet another reminder that protecting our children is everyone's responsibility and silence is no longer an option. Doctor, thank you so much for your wisdom, your hard work, and dedicating your life to everyone in Namibia in ensuring that they get the justice they need, they get the support they need, and the relevant information that they may need to seek justice for themselves once again. And with that being said, thank you for joining us into this episode. We will have another short segment that speaks about a GPV campaign that is yet to be launched very soon at the Be Free Youth Campus under the One Economy Foundation. One of the ways through which Namibia is trying to shift this narrative is through a new initiative which is called Don't Touch Me, I'll Report You campaign, which will be launched on the 23rd of May 2025 under the One Economy Foundation. And joining us in studio as our second guest is Pefimbo Shipunda, who will tell us more about this campaign and why it's a game changer, especially for children. Good afternoon, Pefimbo, and welcome to Sex Talks Podcast. How are you doing today?
Afternoon, Selma. I'm doing fantastic, and I'm happy to be here. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm quite honored that you took time to be here with us. Pefimbo, please tell us more about this Don't Touch Me, I'll Report You campaign. What is it all about?
This campaign is started to raise awareness on gender-based violence, and especially to empower survivors and the community at large to report on issues of gender-based violence. And it has a big focus on prevention. That's why we want to roll it out in schools, in communities, to make sure that every child out there, every community member out there will be able to report on issues of gender-based violence.
Now, Pefimbo, I like how you mentioned the aspect of empowering children so that they can be able to speak out. Now, how long will this campaign run, and is it available in different languages or is it mainly English?
Okay, this campaign doesn't have an end date. It definitely has a start date when we launch it on the 23rd of May, but we want to continue amplifying the message. And for us, this is until at least gender-based violence issues lowers in our communities.
You say that the campaign does not have an end date. It definitely has a starting date, and I love that because gender-based violence is a continuous thing that we need to look at. How are we actually going to be lowering those numbers? Now, when you speak of this campaign, is it only only available in English, or is it available in other languages?
At the moment, the campaign is available in English, but we'll have keywords in different languages. And also when it's coming to rolling out the campaign, we want to be able to communicate in the language that is comfortable in that area where we are going. If we go deep in Kavango, we want to be able to speak to people in the language that they're comfortable with. And that's why for us, this is not an office campaign. It's a campaign that we want anybody out there to say, look, I am going to this community, or I'm at this school, and I want to talk to our children, or I want to talk to our community about this issue. Are you able to give me your material on this campaign? What you can do, what key messages can you make use of, and whatever language you would like to speak to people into. We want everybody to be able to do that. But with the key messages, of course, we'll translate the "Don't touch me, I'll report you" in the different local languages, so that when it comes to, because that's the main keyword for us, "Don't touch me, I'll report you," referring to gender-based violence, and especially sexual violence and violence against children as well. And with that, we want children to sing that song in their school, to say that word, to be able to speak up. So with that, it's easy for us to translate in any local languages, but we would like also anybody that would like to roll it out to be able to speak to the people in the language that they're comfortable with.
Thank you so much for that clarity, Pefimbo. If anything that comes from the conversation that we just had with Dr. Veronica Theron, who is also from the One Economy Foundation, was how kids don't have the language to speak out and don't have the safe spaces where they can be able to speak out, and it's upon us as a community to raise that. Now, what does it mean when a child is empowered to say, "Don't touch me, I'll report you," in their vernacular language?
When a child is empowered, it chases away a perpetrator. Because also perpetrator they target and they respond. So in most of the time, what we call what we call grooming. There are perpetrators who start and they will try and see, okay, how is this child? Is this child active? Is this child able to speak up? If the child is unable to speak up, it puts them in a vulnerable position for the perpetrator to continue. So the moment the child can speak up for themselves, the moment the child can identify to say this is inappropriate, then that empowers them for the perpetrator not to continue doing anything to them. So for us, it's really important for the children to be able to articulate and say no.
Okay. Pefimbo, you mentioned keywords that will be available in vernacular languages and installations that will also be available. Where can one see on these installations that will then be put across there, and where will they be?
So with the first installation, it's going to be in Windhoek. We will, by Friday, we will mention the location, but this is not a fixed location. So we will be able to move it from one location to the other. So what we ask is for people to have a look out for hashtag "Don't touch me, I'll report you." So it might be in your area today, but it might be in another area tomorrow. But at the moment, we only start in Windhoek.
Okay. Now, do these installations also then have toll-free numbers that people can call, or where they can be able to get help, or what else is there apart from now, "Don't touch me, I'll report you"?
So when we roll out the campaign, we'll be able to also leave people with your emergency numbers where you can get services. So the installation will have a small note on the side, but then our main focus is when we go out in the communities. So after the launch, of course, then we'll go to different areas, and especially to schools. It's now during that time that we'll also leave people with something in terms of, if you find yourself in danger, or if you find yourself witnessing something, what is the number that you can dial?
Wow. I'm so excited about this initiative. But before we can be able to let you go from this episode, Pefimbo, I think, what is that one thing that you're looking forward personally, as somebody that has worked on this campaign for a very long time? What do you intend to see, or are you excited to see the campaign achieve?
For me, I'm looking forward to see everybody singing the same song. Because this is a national cry, so we must make it a national campaign, more like even an emergency. So I'm looking forward, just if you look back to when we got independence, it was like a song in schools when they say, "Don't touch it, report it." I'm looking forward to that as well, because then that helps report incidents of abuse. That helps people or children to react back, and that puts them in more of an empowered position so they cannot fall victims of abuse.
I know I said that was my last question, but now based on your response, I actually have a follow-up question in terms of if I'm a life skills teacher that is listening to this conversation and would like this campaign to pop up at my school, who do I contact or what do I do?
Please feel free to reach out to us at the One Economy Foundation, and especially to the Break Free from Violence team. You can reach out either. You can find our contact details all over social media, One Economy Foundation, Break Free from Violence, or you can send us an email, socialworker@oneeconomy.org.
Okay. Those are the contact details and the various social media platforms that you can be able to reach out to the One Economy Foundation should you be interested in launching or rolling out this campaign in your region or anywhere across the country, seeing that we want this to be a national campaign. Pefimbo, thank you so much for joining us in studio today to share more light on this campaign. We will definitely keep you engaged as to what are the findings of this campaign and what can we be able to do as a community. And for those that didn't manage to get the email that she said, I will write it below, and we'll also be able to edit on our various social media platforms as Sex Talks Podcast for you to access there. And with that being said, thank you for tuning in. Please make sure that when you see the Don't Touch Me, I'll Report You campaign in your community, you share with those that may need the help, because you never know who may need the support. And if this conversation has triggered you or you feel you may need psychosocial support, we are available at the Be-Free Youth Campus, that is at the Multipurpose Youth Center in Bodal Street, and we can be able to refer you to a psychologist. All you need to do is call us for a booking, or you can walk in for as long as you are a member or between the age of 13 to 35. If you're not a member, do not be worried. Your first and your second assistance at the center or service can be for free while you sign up to be a member. And with that being said, thank you for watching Sex Talks Podcast. We will be back with episode 5 very soon. And with that being said, amigos, adios.